All right, guys, it is time for us to take a look at other ways that we can use Photoshop. And today what we're going to do is use Photoshop to create a very simple animation. And then in the next badge assignment, you're going to expand upon these skills and try to make something a little bit more elaborate. So let's get started with the essentials. We need to open up Adobe Photoshop, of course. We're going to go to Create New. And we do want a custom size. So if you just click on your default Photoshop size, that's fine. Come over here and give it a name. You can name this Wolf Animation or First Animation, Photoshop Animation, whatever you want. We are going to change our size from inches to, looking for it, pixels. There we go. So that's what we want this to be in. And we want it to be 900 pixels by 600. And then you want to make sure your resolution is at 300 pixels per inch. So if that is anything different, then go ahead and change that. And then you can go ahead and hit create once you have all of these elements in place. Now what we'll need to do is within Canvas, with this assignment, I put a link for you to download the image of the eyes, and then a link for you to download the WAV file, the sound file of a wolf howl. So you will need to make sure that you download these and send them to your desktop so that you'll have them available for you to use. And I have mine all ready to go here on my desktop. So here is the wolf eyes that we're going to use. So with that on your desktop, you're just going to take it and drag it straight into Photoshop. Go ahead and get it sized to fit your artboard. And then have the computer accepted by hitting the enter button or hitting that check mark. As always in Photoshop, as soon as you put an image in, you must make sure that you rasterize it so that the computer can convert all of this into individual pixels to manipulate. So over here where it says wolf eyes, on the name of that file, we're going to do a right click and then scroll down till you see rasterize layer and make sure that little white box is gone. And now you know that the computer is ready to be able to manipulate this. So the first thing that we want to do now that we have it in place is we want to size it. Since this is an animation, we don't want it to be too large. The smaller you can get it, the better it's going to be able to play. So I'm going to crop it. So over here, get your crop tool, or C is your command, your shortcut command. And you just want to crop it so that you get the eyes in the center. So you see that our bars there are helping us with our guide. You just want to trim it down just a little bit so we have the focus there on the eyes. And when you're ready, go ahead and hit accept or enter. And we are ready to go now. All right, so our goal is to make the iris of the eyes glow. So we want to select just that's part of the eye, and what we're going to end up doing is making a copy of that on its own layer so we can manipulate it individually. So you'll need to come up here to your quick selection tool to activate that. And to make it easier, you could go in and like we did before, and you can just select that portion of it and then get it in. But I'm going to use that select color range that I showed you before. And right now I had done this previously before, so you would probably have it completely black. So I'm going to try to get mine to match yours right now, because I'm sure your screen looks different than mine. There we go. So that's probably something closer to what you have. So what you'll need to do is click on the eyedropper tool with the plus, and then click over here on the wolf's eye and just add, we're telling the computer to add that color range for what we want selected. And you can see everything else is black, and it's trying to get just that color. So I'm going to adjust the fuzziness just a little bit. And I see there's still some bits over here, so you can actually click it right there and it'll add it in. You might notice over here my color range is changing because that's what it's picking up, are those actual color. Too much. Command Z. Nope, it's not Command Zing back. Got to try it again. We want that. There we go. You just got to work on your adjustments sometimes. Don't get too crazy because it will go what it just did with mine. So once you get a good selection of the eyes, go ahead and hit OK. And then you see that it picks them up. And then I'm just going to come over here and click to add some of those pixels that it did not get that I need. So we really just want to get the iris selected. Oops, too much. Hold down Alt if you want to switch it from plus to minus. And try to get that computer to get what I need. Right there, we do not want the pupil, so make sure that that is not selected. You should have your marching ants going around there. A little bit of adjustment. You can always zoom in. Oops, it's a little crazy. Zoom in, change your pixel size so that it is able to get less pixels, and fine tune it just like that. All right, once you have your pupils selected, then we're going to make a copy of just the pupils. So that command is Command J. And you see that now I have a layer. I'll close that frame so that you can see it. Now I have a layer just of the eyes. That's exactly what you want. So with animation in Photoshop, what it does is it will flip between layers. You can have it flip between layers. You can have things change position, and it will create a frame. And then the more frames you add, you just have changes, then you see what animation occurs. So we're going to go ahead and open up the window that is responsible for animation. So you need to come up here to Window, and then it is called Timeline. So from Window, go to Timeline. And yours probably says Create Video Animation. So I want you to change that. So over here on this drop-down button, click on that, then choose Create Frame Animation. And let's make sure we are on our wolf eyes layer. And to create the frame animation, you actually have to click this button where it says Create Frame Animation. And it did just that. It created a frame, a snapshot of what all of the layers that it sees right now. So if I want to add another frame, it is over here, just like in Adobe Illustrator. So when we add a layer, we have that button here, just over here, the same thing. So if I click on that, then I add another frame, and you notice it's a duplicate of the exact same frame because it just duplicated or made a frame of everything I had selected here. So if I want it to be different, then I have to deselect or deactivate one of those two layers. So I'm going to deactivate or make the wolf eyes not be visible anymore. And so now you see I have this frame, which has both the eyes and the wolf eyes, the main one, selected, and then this one just had the eyes visible. So to see how the animation works, what it does is it just flips through. It's kind of like a flip book. It flips back and forth between these two. So if you check over here where mine says forever, if yours says once or 3 times or something different, I want you to click on that until it says forever. And then these should be familiar, just like what you'd have on your DVR or on your cable box, something that will let you play any of your recordings. So if you hit play, it flips back and forth between those two frames. Hope you guys aren't going to have any issues with seeing that. Be careful with it. You will have to stop it to get it to stop, otherwise it will go on forever. But what it's doing is just flipping back and forth between those two frames, and that's how we get an animation. So it's really pretty simple, but the quality of your animation comes in how many frames that you add and what you do with the actual images to change them to make it look nice. So let's go ahead and get started by, I'm going to delete this frame. So click on frame number 2 and then hit the trash can. It will say delete this frame, and we want to say yes. If you don't want this message to pop up, you can click on the don't show again, but it is a way for you just to not accidentally delete something. All right, so now let's go in to layer number 1, and we're going to modify this to get that glow effect. So in order to do that, we're going to do add a color overlay over the eyes and then a glow. So where it says layer 1, do a right click, and we get these options that pop up. Come up here to the top where it says blending options. We're going to click over here where it says color overlay. Now again, I did this earlier. Yours probably is gray, and that's fine. So we're going to come over here, and yours probably also says normal. So I want you to change it to screen. So get on that drop down and change it to screen. Probably also has 100% opacity. We'll change that in a minute. And over here on your color picker, double click on that, and I want you to go from that gray color to a red color. And click OK. And let's go ahead and lower the opacity just a little bit so we get some of that natural colorization of the iris. So you can pick whatever level you want. You do want it to at least be visible. So somewhere in the 70s or close to that should be good. I like to Windows at 71. There we go. That's good enough. All right, so that gives us our color overlay. Now we need to do an outer glow. These are all of the options of what you can do. You can put an outline on it. You can do an inner shadow, inner glow. Not sure what satin does. I haven't tried that one yet. We could do a gradient overlay, pattern overlay. Let's go ahead and click on outer glow to activate that. And again, yours is probably gray. You want to make sure if it's on normal, we change it to screen. And we don't want it to be gray, so yours is probably gray. So you probably want to use your color picker and choose a red glow. And mine's kind of going crazy over there. I need to up the opacity, but I want to change the spread in the size. So you can adjust these. You can see over here how it's changing. Change it to the way you want it to be. Spread is how far out that spread is. That looks good to me. So yours you'll need to modify. Looks like I picked up some extra pixels over there, but that's okay. You can modify yours the way you want it to glow. And when you're ready, hit OK. And now you see we have that glow. So that glow effect is only on these eyes. So if I take that off, then you see that we have just the eyes with those two effects to them. If I just activate the wolf, and then I have the wolf without the eyes glowing. So now what we're going to do is work on our animation part. So we know that we need to have a bunch of frames that go in. I'm working on my papers, making sure I have the right stuff. So let's go ahead and add another frame, but this time we want to turn on the glow. So we have a frame without the eyes glowing and a frame with the glow. So if we go ahead and hit play, you can see that it goes in between, which is kind of cool, but it's very fast. So we're going to find a way to make it lengthen our animation and to make it more gradual. So what we need to do is use this process called tweening, and that's this button right here. Tweening stands for between. It doesn't stand for a kid that's not quite a teenager. So tweening is going to add frames between these two frames to lengthen them. So it does a gradual progression from going from this image to this image. So you will need to select both frames. In order to do that, you have frame number 1 should already be activated. Hold down Shift, select frame number 2, and then hit your tween button. So we want to make sure that we're tweening between selection, and we are going to add 10 frames. Yours probably says 5, so we're going to add 10. And then we have all layers because we just have those 2. In the parameters of what you could tween position. So later for the next batch, you can actually have several objects on here, and you can have your object move from one place to another, or different objects moving around. Opacity, so that's kind of like appearing or disappearing, so it could have it fully in view at 100%, and then if you want it to disappear, you lower that opacity until it disappears. And then effects is what we have here, so these effects. So you can have all 3 of these checked because the only thing we're really going to do is effects anyway. But when you're doing your later animations, it's good to know what these are for. So once you have 10 frames added, hit OK, and you see that it did just that. It added 10 frames. With the gradualization, the computer figured out how to gradually increase that effect from no effect to full effect. So that's really cool. So now we can try it out, and you can see that it is much more gradual, but we want to keep adding more frames because right now this is a very short animation. We only have 12 frames, so that's not even 12 seconds because this doesn't even last a second. Each one does not even last a second long. So we're going to add some more frames. So now we're going to hit frame number 1, and then frame number 12, but this time I want you to hold down Command instead of Shift, because if we had hold down Command and Shift, or excuse me, if we had hold down Shift, it would have grabbed all of these frames, and we just want it to do between 1 and 12. So we're going to add those frames, or tween those frames again. So add another 10 layers. And now we have 22 layers. And let's see how it goes. So now you see we have it going from the lowest with no effect to the brightest effect, and then it went back down to no effect, and that's what we wanted. But let's go ahead and lengthen the time frame for these. So I want you to select all of your frames. So you're going to select frame 1 first, hold down Shift, and go all the way over to frame 22. So now you have all 22 frames are selected. Choose any frame, and over here on the drop down with the time, you're going to click on that. And we're going to change the time to Other, and let's make it 0.06 seconds. That's pretty fast. 0.06 seconds. And let's see what the time does with that. So we went from no time at all, just automatically switched to just lengthening it just a little bit. And let's go ahead and get the frame where the eyes are at their highest value of the glow. And I think it's 13, no 12. I think 12 is the highest. So we're going to make this one last a little bit longer. So selecting just frame 12, click on that drop down button, and let's make that one last a half a second in length. So when we play it, you'll see that it lingers on frame 12 for just a little bit longer than the other ones. Now this whole thing is still very, very short, So what we need to do is lengthen the entire animation. So I want you to grab frame 1, select that, hold down Shift, and grab frame 22. So now all of them are selected. And we're not going to tween it anymore. I don't want it to gradually change. I just want to add frames. So now that I have all 22 frames selected, if I click over here for Add Frames, it's going to duplicate all of those frames. So now I have 44 frames. I'm going to click it again, so I have 66. And then one more time, so you have 88 frames total. So this is just essentially a loop going through all those frames over and over again to lengthen the amount of time that we have for our animation. So now that we have it going all the way to 88, you can see it's pretty good. So now comes the time to add in our sound. So over here, next to where we had how long it was going to play, this is going to convert it from a frame animation to a video animation. So I want you to click on that. This is when you can actually get in, if you've ever done any video work, you can get in and you can trim it, you can cut it, you can add other things in. And what we want to add is an audio track. So you will need to scroll down here to the bottom to add our audio. One word of caution, if you need to go back and fix your frames and you click back here to frame animation, if you did any audio track animation or added that audio track in, you have to start back over. So you don't want to convert it to a frame, or excuse me, to a video animation until you're sure everything was correct, because it's going to say convert back. It will mess all of that up except for the actual timeline keyframes. So make sure that you have all of these frames the way that you want them before you're ready to process it. Because every time you go back, you have to go and reassert your audio. You'll see that once you actually start working with these. So you can test it out to see what it's like. And now let's go ahead and add our audio in. So you're going to click on this drop down button next to the music symbol there, add audio. We're going to find it from our desktop. You should have it there already. There it is. So click on that and hit open. And it's there now. So you could play it. And to make sure my sound was on. So if you notice, the animation keeps going and the sound does not, because that sound clip is very short. So we want to duplicate the sound clip, which is easy to do. You just click on this drop down button, say duplicate it, and you see that now it's essentially the same size. So if we play it, and you can see our end frame, how long this video is roughly 7 seconds long. That was down there. So now that we have our video, it's time for us to convert it to a format where we can play it outside of Photoshop. So the very first thing I want you to do is save this work. Sometimes when people start using programs like Photoshop where you're using a lot of the memory space on your computer, it will freeze up and then you end up losing your work. So it is imperative that you come up here and do File, Save As. You should have it named already. It will be a Photoshop document, PSD. You can send it to your desktop. You can send it to Box if you want to, or your documents. But you do want to make sure you save this. So hit Save. This will always show up because, again, it's a big file version, so it will try to shrink the size as much as possible. So when this pops up, go ahead and hit Don't Show Again, because this warning will always come up. So it's always going to try to compress it as much as possible to save memory space. All right, so now that it's saved, we're going to render this to a video format. So to do that, you come up here to File, Export, Render Video. You should have it named automatically. You want to select your folder. So right now mine's chosen or is sent to my documents, but I can send it to my desktop just as easily, somewhere where you can find it. If this is something you want to save online, then so where you have access to it at home, then you might want to send it to Box or save it to your desktop and then AirDrop it to your iPad. So I'm going to go ahead and hit choose that for my desktop. You don't really need to worry about any of this stuff down here. And then go ahead and hit render. And see, it's working on it, exporting it. Takes it just a minute. It is a pretty big file. All right, let's check and see if it's there on our desktop. So I'm going to minimize my screen. And you will know if it worked because it's going to end in MP4. That is the file format you want it to be in. So if it ends in MP4, then you know that it worked. You can open it up. Your QuickTime player will probably start up and hit play. And there you go. That is your animation, your very first animation. So now you need to get this turned into Canvas for me to show me how well you did. And then you can get started working on your own animation. So something challenging, something that does a little bit more than just one image with eyes glowing and a sound. Can't wait to see what fun you guys have with this.